Okay. Hare Krishna. We're doing the verse 8 today, which is a part of the second section of this book, which is verse 4 to 8. Right? So, um, just one second, let me go back and where is that? Yes, okay. So yes, so the overview is that for this section, mantras 4 to 8, where we are trying to we are be given the knowledge how to develop that spiritual vision. First of all, developing the spiritual vision, or first part, fourth and fifth verse were about that. With our current intelligence, we cannot perceive Ishwar. So then, what should we do? We should develop spiritual vision, and that will eventually lead to us to a state of equanimity towards all living entities. And with that purified vision, when it's further developed, it becomes where we can understand Ishvara. This is the section two. And we went through verse number 4, 7, 6. We went through all the verses, and then so today's verse is 8. This is an interesting verse, a lot of nice new words that we will read today. Let me go back and share that. Where's that? So okay, text 8. Before I go to text 8, anything that we what was it that we discussed in the last meeting? Verse 7. Anything anybody remembers what was the discussion point? Some main points.
Uh, Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
What, uh, what I remember, we discussed that how qualitatively we are same, but quantitatively we are different from Supreme Personality. And then you brought out a very good point. I remember that we have oneness, but there is a different gradation. And you brought out how Jiva Goswami described that, giving the example of sun. I remember you mentioned that sun god is Krishna, and how the
Hmm.
radiance that is coming very close from the sun is the internal energy of Krishna.
Mhm.
And then I think so, sun rays are the marginal energy, and then the reflection that is coming out is the external energy of Krishna. So everything
Mhm.
is sun, but then they have a qualitatively difference in also there at multiple level. So
Mhm.
that is one thing I remember, Prabhuji, from our
Yeah,
last.
yeah, that's a very good point. Yes, we have to realize the oneness in quality, and that brings detachment to us. But then it's not just detachment that we are looking for. Detachment has to come with a sense of humility.
Yes.
Otherwise, the detachment is of no use. For example, we remember the episode of Durvasa Muni and Ambarish from the Srimad Bhagavatam. Durvasa Muni, he's a self-realized soul. He's detached, but there's no humility in him. Whereas Ambarish Maharaj, he's a grasta. He's running a kingdom, his family taking care of them. But he has humility, and that humility coming first automatically brings the detachment in. And he's realizing that, oh, I'm a servant of Krishna. Right? So that's an important aspect, yeah. So it kind of connected to what you were saying, realizing our oneness in quality. And Mahaprabhu also teaches us in the Shikshashtakam that first we have to develop humility. Trinadapi sunichena tarorapi sahishtana. And then he talks of detachment. Na dhanam, na janam, na sundarim kavitam, vaisha jagat kame. So that's what he talks about. So the challenge that impersonalists face is that they're very vulnerable to being to pride, right? And the worst of those is that I want to be, I'm God. That's the worst of the pride that anybody can get. So yeah, so that was what we talked about. So our vision should be uh, whether we are in a spiritual platform or on a spiritual platform, our vision should be spiritual. At least we should strive to make our vision spiritual. Because with material objects, when we use them for spiritual purposes, it leads to purification. And when there is something spiritual, obviously when we use the word spiritual, that it leads to an ecstasy also. So there's, but we should, whatever we have should be used for Krishna service. Anasaktasya vishayan yatharam upayunjita nirbandha Krishna sambandhe yuktam vairagyam uchyate. That the yukta, the renunciation is best when we learn to use everything for Krishna's service. Prapanchikata buddhaya hari sambandhi vastuna mumukshubha parityagi yuktam vairagya yuktam phalgu vairagyam uktaya. If we are not using those things and we're just giving them away, we are detached, but we don't know the proper use of them, then it's phalgu vairagya. It's just a show bottle vairagya. It's a show bottle renunciation. So learning to use everything for Krishna's service is the best form of renunciation we all can come to. And so when we come with a mind of humility, with a mind full of humility, or at least an endeavor to be humble, a sincere endeavor, then there is a sense of reciprocation with Krishna. Otherwise, that doesn't exist. It just becomes a dry detachment. Okay, that's a good point. We had, so those are the points. Before I jump into it, anybody else had any other points from the last verse? Anything that we missed? No? Okay. So let's get going. So today's verse is an interesting verse. There's a lot of wonderful verses. So let's read that. Sa prayagat shukra akayam avranam ashnaviram shuddham apapaviddham kavir manisi paribhu swayambhu yathathathayo arthan vividhat shashvitabhya samabhya. Let's look at the word by word. Sa. So the sa stands for that person. So who's that person who's been talked about in the earlier verses? So if you quickly see the earlier verses, Yasmin Sarvani Bhutani. So one who is always. Then before that, the sixth verse was Yastu Sarvani Bhutani, he who. Then was it in fifth or sixth also? Let's see. Oh, this is about the Lord. Okay, so verse 4, 6, and 7, we clearly see that somebody is being referred to. But that's the one with these who's making that spiritual endeavor. That person is being talked about here. So in sixth and seventh verses, we notice that. And that third is continuing in the eighth verse also, where it starts with Sa prayagat shukra makaya vashnaviram shuddham apapaviddham kavir manisi swayambhu paribhu yathathathayo viddhat shashvitabhya samabhya. So such a person who has developed that spiritual vision and has come to a level of equanimity towards every living entity, how he can develop now so that's the vision in the mode of goodness, right? Everybody is equal and so forth. But our desire to go beyond that, our desire to come to the transcendental platform, which is the pure goodness, sattva, shuddha sattva. So this verse is telling us, so let's look at the word by word. So paryagas, that such a person must know in fact what? That the Lord is Shukram, he is omnipotent, he's Akayam, he's unembodied, he's Avranam, without reproach. Reproach means blame. He's without any blame. Ashnaviram, without veins. He's Shuddham, he's antiseptic. Apapaviddham, prophylactic. He's Kavi, omniscient. He's a philosopher. Paribhu, the greatest of all. Swayambhu, self-sufficient. Yathathatheo. And then this last sentence, Yathathatheo Adhyat Vizitat Shashvitabhya Samabhya, means he's been fulfilling everyone's desire since time immemorial. So that's what the Lord has been doing for time immemorial. He's been fulfilling everybody's desires. Okay, so this is the description. Let's see, going back to the mantra 8. So all these words, Prabhupada has described them in detail in the purport. It's a long purport, 8-9 paragraphs. In the major section, Prabhupada is covering these first 2 paragraphs. He's bringing out these 2 words. One is unembodied, and the other is without wings. Now it's interesting how, let's see. So yes, Akayam is unembodied, Ashnaviram is without wings. Okay. Uh, Now, how to understand this? Let's go back to the verse. Where is our verse? Okay. Now, coming to Sudasya. So, Akayam, the word Akayam, uh, I'm trying to say how to explain it. Akayam. So, the word Kaya, as we know, means skin, right? Kaya. So, Akayam, somebody could say it means impersonal, right? But then the right way of understanding is that the Lord's form is so great that nothing can compare to it. Sometimes we compare the Lord's form to different things. Like Kunti Maharani in the first canto, 8th chapter, she says, Nama Pankaja Nabhaya, Nama Pankaja Maline, Nama Pankaja Netraya, Namaste Pankajangre. So that she compares Krishna's navel, his eyes, his whole body to a lotus. So when people understand God, then they realize that he is way beyond. So he's way beyond. Like Arjun, right? So Arjun, when he saw Krishna in the Krishna's universal form, in the which chapter of Bhagavad Gita talks of Krishna's universal form? Bhakti Sastri students.
Ch-
11th chapter.
Chapter 11 or 13?
11.
11,
Yeah.
yeah.
11. Yes.
Thank-
Krishna's is universal form is shown in 11th chapter. So what happens towards the end of the 11th chapter, when Krishna is shown him, Arjun realizes that Krishna is somewhere beyond what I used to think of him. And he says, Sakheti Matva Prasabham Yaduktam. Hey Krishna, hey Yadav, hey Sakheti. He says that to Krishna. That Sakheti Matva Prasabham Yaduktam. That I thought you are my friend and I would joke with you. And he goes, Agyanatam, Agyanta Mahimanam, that I didn't know your glory. And so he realizes that Krishna is way beyond than what he's presented himself as his friend, as his nephew, as his cousin brother, and so forth. So when a person becomes self-realized, he can see God is way beyond than what we can see. So Akayam word, it seems as if it's impersonal, but then what it actually, and we'll talk more about Akayam, but in a broader sense, you have to understand that Akayam, what the way Prabhupada is explaining it, he's putting is unembodied, and we'll understand that word also. That he's way beyond comparing to anything. Nothing can compare to it. So that's the way to understand it. Okay. Now, as I said, Akayam means without skin. Kaya means skin. Akayam is without skin. Right? So, but then again, we as we say that no, God has a form. So how to understand that is when two statements are contradictory, then a third statement has to be there that give us a truth, right? So, for example, let me give you an example that Prem Dham does not eat throughout the day, okay? But Prem Dham's weight is increasing. So, what does that mean? There is a third statement that would automatically resolve these two contradictory statements. Is what Prem Dhams eat secretly at night. So if we look at it from that perspective, we understand that when two statements in Shastra, so Shastras are never contradictory. It's my understanding that's lacking, and because of that, I'm misinterpreting it. But overall, Shastras are not contradictory ever. So as our intelligence grows, our clarity of Shastras also increases drastically. Right? We have read in the earlier verses, right, that God is what? Anejadekam manaso javyo. So that he can run faster than everybody else. Right? He can run faster than mind also. And then in the fifth verse, Tadejati Tannayejati. He can walk and not walk. So there is a description of a living person who has a body, walking, running. And here we are seeing Akayam, right? So how can somebody who does not have a body walk or run, right? In the eighth canto, Gajendra says in a prayer to Krishna, he calls Krishna Arupaya and Ururupaya. So how do you understand? Arupaya means no roop. Ururupaya means that roop is has many uru, right? So uru means many, so many rupas. So what that means, rupa means Krishna, God has no material form. But uru rupya means God has many spiritual forms. So no form, wherever the word no form comes, it means that no material form. That's the way we should understand it, right? Many forms refers to spiritual forms. So Vedas always give us the absolute truth, right? And when my understanding corrects, we are able to see things. And how do we correct our understanding? Is through Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. uh, His Holiness Bhakti Chaitanya Swami Maharaj was at our temple this weekend, Sunday, right? You all were there. I asked him when he was leaving, I asked him, Maharaj, there are such complex concepts in Bhagavatam. How do we talk about that, right? Like he himself was bringing up a concept of, you know, Sukadev Goswami remaining in his mother's womb for 16 years, right? And he suggested me we should not speak that to you. So what he was indicating was, and he later on clarified that too, he said that our understanding is limited in the earlier stages, Kanishta, Madhyama. Only a Uttam Adhikari when we come to that level. It's not like it's black and white, it's gray. As we go towards that stage, things clarify for us. And understanding becomes better, and we are able to appreciate what we are reading. So, yes. So now coming to the word um, akaya. Now, Prabhupada, he translates the word as unembodied. Is that word, right? Unembodied. So, if you look at the meaning of the word unembodied, so there is disembodied and there is unembodied. So I'm going in a bit of a English grammar kind of a place. When a soul gets a body, it becomes embodied. Okay, like I am embodied. This body is mine. I'm a soul. I'm in this body. And when that body is taken away, we become disembodied, like ghosts, right? Water ghosts. Ghosts are living entities who only have their subtle body. They don't have a gross body. So the word disembodied is a negative suffix. Somebody got something, it was taken away. Unembodied means there was never a body given to that person, and never ever it was taken away. So what that means, that person has an eternal body, right? It was never like, oh, I had it today, tomorrow I don't have. So for the Lord, there is no embodiment or disembodiment, right? So the word akaya means that so the word kaya, right? So somebody can ask us, oh, kaya means skin. You are saying it in a wrong way. But we have to understand that words can have many implied meanings also. For example, 50 years ago, if you would use the word gay, that would mean cheerful. Or I was at a gay party today. Yeah, the party was cheerful. But today, if you say somebody I was at a gay party, that's a completely different meaning. It talks about somebody's sexual inclination. So the words can have implied meanings also. That's what. And then the word embodied, as I had explained, means a position for somebody who never got a body or never will lose that body. He's not like bodied and disembodied, right? So that's not the case with Krishna. When I die, I will become disembodied, right? So, and then when I'm in this body, I get degraded by my bodily desires. But Lord's body is not affected by those bodily desires. So my skin is an outcome of my past karma. So kayam has a very profound meaning. So this is something that we all have to understand, because we all are. Oops, sorry, my laptop is hanging up. One second. Yes. So some people can come to you and question you for this interpretation. So you have to be strong, and you should be very clear on what it means, right? So when you read this whole verse, then also it gives you a better interpretation. So when akaya means disembodied, then the next word that Prabhupada is highlighting is ashnavir, which means without veins. So if somebody does not have a body, why would you say he does not have veins? Right? There is no sense in saying one does not have any veins if we have already told that person has no body. Right? If somebody does not have any clothes, it doesn't make sense that, oh, he does not have a tie. Yeah, you just told me he does not have clothes. So that means he does not have any clothes. So doesn't have a tie either, right? I have no house. That means I don't have a bedroom also. So that's logical common sense. So that's the way to understand this concept of akayam, right? So the Supreme Lord is not given a body like us. His form is eternal. And then he has a special kind of body that has no weights. Okay. So that's an important concept to understand. Okay. I'll take a pause and see if everything is clear to this point. There are other words that I'll go into in detail. Okay. All
So,
clear?
Prabhu, we are talking about spiritual body, right?
For
As-
Krishna. Yes.
Yeah, Satchitanand, right? That is what we are describing here, right?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yes. So our body is different from us. My body is constantly degrading, right? Because of my interaction with this material world.
Mm.
But Krishna is so, but then I'm a soul. But then Krishna, he's fully of that spiritual material. He's made of that spiritual material, of which I'm just a fraction, and that tiny fraction is sitting in this material body. But for Krishna, that spiritual is the complete thing. His whole body is spiritual. That's the difference here, as you said. Yes, we're talking about his Sachidanand form.
Thank you.
Prabhuji, so the translation starts with such a person must factually know. So whom are we referring to? Which person, like Mahabhagavatas, or whom it is being referred to here?
Okay, that's a good point. So this is coming in that continuation because, as I mentioned, we are in the section of this book, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. There are 5 verses, and this "sa" has been used in the earlier verses also. So that person must factually. So who's that person? Let's go back. I'll show you the earlier verse. So who's that person who always sees all living entities as spiritual sparks? Okay, that's one thing. That everybody is a part of Krishna. That's one aspect of that person that is being referred to here. Then the other thing is different. He who sees in relation to the Supreme Lord. Everything is Krishna's part and parcel, and who sees the Lord in everybody. So a person who has these two qualities is a Mahabhagavat, as rightly you're saying. He's an Uttamadhikari. Is at that platform of spiritual realization. So that person, now coming back to our today's verse, so that person, he must factually understand Krishna or the Lord has all these qualities. And what do these qualities eventually tell you, right? If I just look at it from a far view, from a bird's view, that they're telling me that Krishna is protecting me the whole time. And it should make me fearless. Once somebody asked Prabhupada that, Prabhupada, what do you feel when you chant? Prabhupada said, I feel fearless. Why? Because he's understanding that Krishna is omnipotent. He knows everything. So he knows what's going to, he knows everything. So he's taking care of me. He's all knowing. He knows that whatever I'm doing, my bhava is correct. So even if others are not, if others are judging me as wrong, he's okay. He knows me. He's been fulfilling my desires from time immemorial. So why wouldn't he fulfill my desire, which is also his desire of having a loving relationship with him? So eventually, this whole verse is talking about an Uttam Adhikari who's become fearless by coming to that platform where he is feeling and he is realized fully the love of Krishna and the presence of Krishna in his life.
I see. Thank you so
That's
much.
yeah. As devotees say that, yeah, I haven't seen Krishna's face, but I see Krishna's hand in my life every day, every minute. So that's what Krishna's presence makes us, and once we feel that. So yes, that's the person being referred to here. Okay, so that was the first part, Akayam, Ashnavir. And you will notice that Prabhupada doesn't necessarily go by the where's my computer? Doesn't necessarily go by the order of the verse, because he's taking those words out which he feels are more important and he wants to explain them in more detail. But there are some words that he won't go in detail, probably half a paragraph, a short paragraph or something, because he knows what the biggest confusion we all have. and which is very inherent in us, this aspect of an impersonal being. We all, to some extent, are impersonal. Impersonalism is those people who are envious of Krishna's form, you know, because I want to be God myself. At some point or the other, I want to do that. Might be in a very minute form, but I have that desire somewhere that I want to control things. So I want to be a God in my own self, in my own uh, little, wherever I'm living, little tiny world. So Prabhupada knows that this is a disease that we all are going through. So he's bringing those important words out first. And that's what we talked about. Okay. So now what Prabhupada does is, after talking about these two verses, he talks about this last sentence. Yathathayo arthan vidadhat shashvitabhya samabhya. And okay, I'm assuming you all read the purports. I don't remind you every week, but you have to understand that what I'm saying is what Prabhupada is doing. So, for example, Prabhupada in the first section, he's talking about Ashnaviram not Ashnaviram and Akaya. Okay. And then after the third one, third and fourth, I think he starts bringing out these other parts. So I'm not going to go through the purport, but I'm giving you according to the purport, just to make that clear. So if you don't read, please read purports. It's very important. Okay, so now Prabhupada starts explaining Yathathayo Arthan Vedadhat Shashvitabhya Samabhya. And what it means is that he's been fulfilling people's desires for time immemorial. Okay. Yeah, okay, here it is. It is clearly stated that Lord has been supplying goods to the living entity from time immemorial. Okay, that's what we discussed, the last sentence of the paragraph of the verse. So the living being desires something, and the Lord supplies the object of that desire in proportion to one's qualification. So now let's understand this part. So what Prabhupada is saying, that when someone gets something, right, obviously we need a qualification. But then that the result also has to be bestowed to us by a higher authority. Right? So what Isopanishad is telling us that the Lord has been fulfilling our desires for time immemorial. So there is a qualification and there is a bestowal from the higher authority. Just having the qualification does not get us results. Many good-looking people go to the movie industry, try to become movie stars, and they fail. And some average-looking people become movie stars, big shot. So it's not. So there has to be some aspect of the mercy also coming from the higher authorities. And this is also acknowledged across other books. Bhagavatam, Prahlad Maharaj says that Balasya Neha Sharanam Pitrau Narsimha. That having a father is not enough for child's protection. Right? Having a parents is not. Yeah? It's not that I can fully protect my child. So that's another concept that's being brought about here. So there has to be karma and there has to be daiva. Daiva means there have to be a higher authority's intervention to give us that results. However, this does not mean that nothing is in our hands. Okay, so let's talk a bit about that. This concept we have talked about the Bhagavad Gita, but I'll still go through it once again for people's clarity. What does it mean? That it's, we're also told that, hey, you are not the doer. But then again, somebody can ask us, oh, if I'm not the doer, why am I punished? So this kind of contradiction is out there a lot, and we have talked about it, but let's talk about it again. In Mahabharata, Vidur, was explaining to Dhritarashtra, because Dhritarashtra was always saying, oh, it's destiny. So, what can I do, right? So everything is determined by destiny, right? So what was Dhritarashtra doing? He was using Daivavad. So there are two ways of living our lives. There are two schools of thoughts, right, with respect to destiny. Karmavad and Daivavad. So Daivavad means that everything is determined by destiny. There is no role that I play. And that's what Dhritarashtra was saying. Right? He was using Daivavad to justify his inaction when Duryodhana was doing atrocities on the Pandavas. So Vidur told him, stop your son. Right? Accept Krishna's peace proposal. Dhritarashtra, oh no, it is the will of destiny. Who am I, a tiny mortal? So that's what he said. So Vidura reminded him, you have your duty. You have the freedom to do your duty or not. So you should try to stop your son, right? But then he did not. So that's it. So yes. So and this is a misconception that many Western philosophers also have about our Vedic philosophy. They think that Vedic philosophy is fatalistic. Fatalistic means that everything is predestined. But no, our philosophy is not that. We, they thought, oh, Indians are lazy. They just depend on destiny. No. Indians were never lazy. We wrote the world's biggest poem, the Mahabharata. Right? It's 7 times bigger than the world's next 2 biggest poems. Which was that? Odyssey was one of those. And there's one more. Iliad, how do you pronounce it? I don't know. Iliad or Iliad, whatever it is. But those are the 2 most, the biggest poems. But Mahabharata is actually 7 times bigger than both of them. Right? So we were not lazy. We were not Daivavad. However, that's some people think. Now, on the other hand, is Karmavad. So Karmavad means by my karma, I'll be successful. If I work hard enough and smart enough, then I'll be the next Bill Gates. Right? By my sweat and my muscles, I'll succeed. But if you look at the reality of life, so many people work hard, but they're not successful. Right? So that idea that everything depends on my hard work is very frustrating. So karmavad leads to frustration. So what we are told in this word is that Krishna has been fulfilling our desires for time immemorial. Right? So we take up both of them, karmavad and daivavad. That's what our philosophy is. We do our work, and then we also depend on Krishna's mercy. Right? Like so. Going back to my original question, which I had said that if we are not the doers, why should we be punished? So understanding it from this perspective, that let's take an analogy. A thief steals, police catches him, and the judge sentences him to jail. All 3 are causes: the jiva, the ishvara, and prakriti. Right? So the jiva is the thief, the prakriti is the police, and the ishvara is the judge. But the police would not have arrested, or the court would not have sentenced the thief to jail if the thief wouldn't have stolen anything. So the thief is the initiating cause. Therefore, we as souls have to take responsibility. Right? So if Arjun thinks that he can win the war, that is not correct. Right? Because as we all know, in the 18th chapter, towards the end of 18th chapter, Krishna says to Arjun, right? Vimrishita dasheshena yathechhasi tadha. I have taught you everything, now you do as you like. So there is a doership there, right? So Krishna is asking him to do his duty. But then Krishna in the earlier chapters has told him, in the 8th chapter, 7th verse, Krishna says, Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu mam anuspara yuddhecha. You go do your fighting, but remember me. Okay? So the whole focus of Bhagavad Gita is to do our duty, irrespectively whether we get results or not. Bhagavad Gita does not analyze our karma, right? What and why it's happening to me, right? But then it talks about my choices, what I should be doing. So, and even in Bhagavad Gita, many places, Krishna says that the ego is the doer. He says, "Ahankara vimudhatma kartamiti manyate," 3rd chapter, 27th verse, of Bhagavad Gita. So, what I'm saying is that we are responsible for the action, but it's not that we are fully responsible. It's not like we do the action, but we're not responsible for the reaction in one way. We can't do anything about the reaction. The reaction will come by its own accord, according to my action. So yes, I am the initiating cause, but there are other causes also. So that's what we are being told here in this verse, that he's been fulfilling our desires from time immemorial. But then the desire aspect is coming from me. I'm the one desiring it. Okay. Now, if I am in the influence of Maya, then my ahankar is making me bringing those desires forward. Prakrte kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvasa ahankara vimudatma kartahamiti manyate. So that's the concept of a materialistic person. But of a devotee, the devotee is always depending on Krishna. That, okay, Krishna, I'll do as you want me to do. Karishe vachanam taha. That's the answer that Arjun gives to Krishna in the 18th chapter. I'll do as you want me to do. Okay. So material nature is yeah. So okay, yeah, I'll just take it. Yeah. So that's the understanding of how do we take into account the actions we are doing and the results that are coming to us. The Karmavad philosophy, Daivavad philosophy, and how we are in the between. We are both Karmavad and Daivavad also. We do our karma also, but then we depend on higher sources also for reactions. Okay, so that's the last sentence of the verse. Is that all clear? Any thoughts or comments on that? Okay, good, it's clear. What I try to sometimes do is I present a question and then I answer it. If you remember these questions, because these questions are very obvious, and any person coming into bhakti would ask you these questions. And you, being serious practitioners, should have an answer to those questions. When you answer somebody's questions, it makes your bhakti stronger. Don't answer the question with the thought that, oh, I'm blessing this person by answering this person's question. Always remember that it's strengthening your bhakti, it's leading to your purification. So if somebody comes and asks you an question, answer it with an attitude that, oh, this person is benefiting me, he's helping me in my bhakti. So with that mindset, when you answer, the answer becomes more relishable by the other person, and it also purifies us. Just a short comment there. Okay. Another word that Krishna.
Prabhu,
Sorry.
uh,
Yes, please.
Can we go back to that highlighted one?
Yeah. Okay.
Highlighted portion, the living being desires something and the Lord supplies the object of desire in proportion to one's qualification. So I remember that chart, right, where we had seen the flow of order from sense object to sense to mind to intelligence to the soul, and then of course in illusioned soul, that super soul, no connection, right? But that super soul is he sanctions our desire, right?
Mhm.
So desire can be, some people have crazy desires, right? Not everybody has a very good desire. That is why
Mhm.
so much of crime and all is happening, because some people have bad desire.
Yeah.
And that is also being sanctioned, right?
Yeah,
So,
that is also being sanctioned.
so when we say design proportion to one's qualification, so it means how do we relate to that thing when people have very bad desires and which is not good and it gets sanctioned? Means what is the qualification for that type of bad desire being sanctioned?
So
Let's not
yeah.
take the view of devotee here, common people doing all bad stuff.
Mhm.
How do we say that Paramatma is sanctioning that desire, super soul in our heart?
So yes, so see the soul, when it becomes illusion by whatever it may be, the material world, the soul continues to, so it's like the intelligence becomes weaker and weaker and weaker. The more we interact with this material world, our intelligence becomes weaker. It becomes bahushakha, right? The verse that 241 in the Bhagavad Gita says, Vyavasatmika buddhi ekehi kurunandana bahushakha nantascha buddhe avyavasayinam. A person who is not intelligent, his intelligence becomes many branched. And when it becomes many branched, his his intelligence becomes very, very weak. And that's where those desires attack him. It's like if you're strong enough, those immoral desires won't attack you that much. But when we are so much engrossed in this material world, those desires, it makes it very easy for the desires to come to us. Okay. And so that's one aspect, that why do people have such low desires? And when they keep desiring those low things, they eventually keep going lower and lower and lower. Right? Krishna says this in the 16th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, that Trividha narkasya dvam dwaram nashnam atmanam kam krodha tatha lobha tasmadetam trayam tyajet. So he's saying kam, krodha, and lobha. These are the main three things that eventually make us fall down into those hellish desires and eventually hellish condition. So that is the basis of why do those people have bad desires, because they have let their intelligence degrade to an extent where it has become completely non-existent for them, kind of. They're fully dependent on the mind. Intelligence is non-existent. Now, the super soul, and we have seen this, if you remember, we talked about, right, Dua Saparna Saujya Sakhya. There was this verse where we talked about there are two birds sitting on a tree.
Yes.
One bird is eating the fruits, some sweet, some bitter. The super soul is just sitting there. We read this also in the 13th chapter. That is Krishna, or the super soul is, what was that word? He is the observer and the permitter. Which verse? Do you remember the word verse? Let me see. I like that verse very much. I think it's 34, 13:24. He's observer and the permitter, as it's called. Let me see. I'll just pull up that. So what I'm trying to say is that the role of the super soul is very limited. Okay, in context to us, it's not like the super soul is limited by himself. He's fully, like, right, we have the Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan. They all are complete in themselves. I
Yeah,
just
Prabhu,
don't
so
see.
I do understand that soul is just an observer in his so when we say sanctions it, what exactly? Because soul is an observer, and of course we have the free will, right? And that is
Yeah.
why we continue to do the bad stuff we are doing. And
Yeah.
obviously Paramatma is not going to stop you, but obviously there is some conscious deep inside your heart that says it's wrong, but still you just bypass it and do what you have to do. So when we say here, I was just trying to relate with this line, desire in proportion to one's qualification. So the living being desires sometime, and the Lord supplies the object of that desire in proportion to one's qualification. So I just wanted to relate this to the example that I was giving. How do we relate this to that example? I understand that word and logic, but yeah, how do we, Prabhu, understand this piece with that? Like,
Yeah. Is your question that
that the Lord supplies the object? Why does Lord supply that object, which is a band object, in proportion to one's qualification? Means, is he qualified to do all that bad stuff, all the bad stuff that the
so the
people,
word
bad
here,
people
the
do?
word qualification doesn't necessarily mean that he has some good qualities or anything. Qualification means that whatever you deserve, or what is the reciprocation? Understand it that way. So that Krishna, or the Lord Supreme, the super soul, is just reciprocating according to the desire. That's what the super soul is doing. He is not defining your desires for you. You are the one desiring. And the word qualification has to be looked at in a bigger perspective. It's not like I have generated some qualification to do those bad things. It's just that I'm being reciprocated by the super soul. That's what the word qualification should be understood as. So is your doubt around the word qualification there, right? You're saying. So
And
let's
in
look at
proportion to one's, desire in proportion to one's qualification. Yeah, that is what I got stuck here.
yeah. So now I just looked up the meaning of the word qualification on Google. This says that the action or the fact of qualifying or being eligible for something. So it means that being eligible for something, that's what qualification means. So because my desires are bad, I become eligible for bad reactions. So it's just a reciprocation. There is no loving relationship. There is no father chastising the son that don't do this, even though the son is adamant on doing something. There is nothing of that sort. The son is just saying, I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to do this. And then the father says, okay, do it. Right? So that's the relationship that's happening here. There is no loving relationship there. There is no, as I said, the father-son relationship is not there. It's just like a guardian and a child. And the guardian is completely aloof, doesn't care about the child. The child says, oh, I want to smoke. The father or the guardian says, yeah, go ahead, do that. Because that's the desire. But the desire is coming from the child. That desire makes the child eligible for the negative effects which the guardian or the super soul is going to bestow upon them or endow them with.
Got it. It makes sense.
Did that make sense?
Yes,
Yeah,
definitely. Yes. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Yeah. So the word qualification, yes, and now that you've highlighted it, it sounds different also because qualification looks like a good thing. Yogyata, right? As you say in Hindi.
Yes,
You are yogyata. It's a good thing. It's an accomplishment. But
yeah,
here, that's not the way it's being used. It's just something that something you have done something and you are eligible for a reaction which is equivalent in proportion to that action that we have done.
that.
That's the word meaning of the word qualification is here.
Thank you so much.
And in this in the 9th chapter, verse number 29, Krishna says, Samoham sarva bhuteshu name dveshu asti na priya. So Krishna talks of those two kinds of people. So the first part of that verse, 929, is Sammoham sarva bhuteshu name dveshu asti na priya. Sammoham, that all are equal to me. I don't envy anybody. I na dveshati, na sammoham sarva bhuteshu na dveshti na priya. That neither do I love anybody. Right? So he's talking about the common people, that people who are not endeavoring to become Krishna's devotee. For them, he's just reciprocating. Okay, I've been telling you don't do wrong things. You don't want to listen, fine. You go, you have to suffer. Sammoham sarva bhuteshu name dveshu asti na priya. Ye bhajanti tu mam bhaktya maite teshu chahati. In the second part of that verse, Krishna says, Ye bhajante tu mam bhaktya. If you become my devotee, then I take care. Full care. Then, if you are going the wrong way, I will protect you from that also. Right? Many times, Prabhupada's disciples would come to him. There was once a disciple that he cut his finger while cooking in the kitchen, and it was bleeding profusely. And he came to Prabhupada. You said Krishna protects. So Prabhupada told him, yes, Krishna protects. Right now, your whole finger would have been chopped off, but Krishna protected you by just getting a small cut. So for a person who become endeavoring to become a devotee, then Krishna brings in the fatherly love. For others, he's just like a guardian, right? Observer and a permitter. So that's the way Krishna is different for devotees and non-devotees. Okay, so let's move on to the next part. So we did we did Akayam and Ashnaviram. And I really like this word Kavi. Kavi means omniscient, right? So the word omniscient means one who knows all, right? He knows everything, right? So now another question comes, which many people ask. Somebody actually sent me a text earlier this week asking me, does free will exist? And so if free will exists, how can Krishna be omniscient? And so that was his question. And so this is something very interesting because yes, Krishna is omniscient. He knows everything. But that doesn't mean that our life is predestined. No. So I'll try to talk a bit about that. Our free will exists, right? And I just talked about that, how Krishna, after speaking the whole Bhagavad Gita, told Arjun, deliberate and do as you want to. So deliberate means that he's appealing to Arjun's intelligence, and do as you desire means Arjun is independent to choose. So there is some free will there, right? So what does the word omniscient mean? Krishna knows whatever situations I will be put through. Krishna knows what options I will have. But Krishna very voluntarily chooses not to define which choice I will make. To understand this concept. Omniscient, yes, he knows everything, but he voluntarily chooses not to define what choice I will make in any given scenario. Right? Just like I was talking about Vidur and Dhritarashtra, right? So Dhritarashtra told Vidur that destiny determines the consequences of our action, not our actions themselves. So Krishna's omniscience means that he knows what the consequence of those, like say, I am at a point, I have to take a judgment, I have three options, and Krishna exactly knows which option is going to take me there. But he is not going to tell me which action I should take, or he doesn't force it on me. He gives me the guidance and then he lets me do it. Our karma does determine what will happen in our life, but it does not determine how we will react to it. Okay, understand that concept. Krishna is never judging, he's not telling me. I can be, okay, so today, it could be that I take my car out and I get hit by another car. But how I react to it is my choice. If you are in India, probably you'll get out of your car and start kicking or punching the other guy. That's a choice you make. But here you cannot do that, police will catch you. So, but then So that's the choice we can make. So how you react is your choice. The situation is not necessarily your choice. That's the way we understand Krishna's omniscience. He knows everything, but he voluntarily chooses not to define what choice we will make. Right? So he's supreme. He has given us free will so that we can reciprocate with him in love. Somebody can ask you, okay, what is the purpose of free will? Why didn't he just take away our free will and call us back home, back to God? No, Krishna wants us to come to him out of love. That is why he's given us free will. Right? So then another thing is that, okay, how does my free will exist when Krishna is omnipotent, he's omniscient, he's the supreme? So the way to understand that is, I have unlimited free will, but within a limited framework. Now, how to explain that is, for example, as a human being, I can talk. Right? I can talk, I can choose whatever I want to talk. I can talk nonsense, sensical, intelligent things, foul words, I can remain silent, anything. But so that's the limited scope of my free will. But it's not like I can just one day stand up and start speaking like the language of the animals. No, that's not within the scope of my free will. I have certain limits. I can tie a horse to a pole with a rope, but then the horse cannot go anywhere beyond the radius of the rope. But within the radius of the rope, the horse can run, stand, sit, whatever he wants to do. Right? So that's the way we understand free will. And that's the way we understand Krishna's omniscience along with the free will that we have been given. Okay? And also, our free will can increase or decrease within this life itself also, depending on what habits we take. Self-realized people have a much higher amount of free will because they are living exactly in tune with what Krishna wants them to do. Right? Just like a child is given more freedom by the parents if the parents see that the child is mature and behaves responsibly. So similarly, Krishna gives more free will to self-realized souls. So the difference lies in how well we use it. So yes, so Krishna is omniscient, but then he chooses not to interfere with what choices we are going to do. That's what Kabir means. Okay. Then, these two words are very good. Shuddham and Apapaviddham. Shuddham means antiseptic and Apapaviddham means prophylactic. Okay. So now let's look at these two words. Shuddham, antiseptic. Just as an antiseptic can neutralize impurities and germs, the Lord, being Shuddham, purifies everything he comes in contact with. Right? In this world we see, right, sanitizers, alcohol-based sanitizers, fire, they have the capacity to purify a place or something. Similarly, when we come in contact with the Lord through his holy name, deity worship, devotional service, then the inner impurity of Kam, Krodh, Lobh, they gradually go away. We become purified. Right? So that's Shuddham. Right? Prabhupada gives the analogy of an iron rod in fire. He talks about it in the Nectar of Devotion. That the iron, when heated in the fire for a long time, becomes red hot and it acquires the qualities of the fire. Similarly, a person who associates with the Lord through devotional service gradually acquires the Lord's transcendental qualities. But as we talked about, qualities, not quantity. They're not the same in quantity. Right? In the modern day world, you see, right, there are so many things. You have UV light treatment, you can filter things, right? Things will come in from a contaminated source, but when you pass them through a purification system, they become clean. They become safe to drink water. So we can also become spiritually clean by connecting with spiritual practices like chanting and so forth. So that's the way to understand Shuddham. Okay? So Shuddham means antiseptic, something that cures a disease, right? Like sometimes if you have a skin infection, a doctor might give you an antiseptic cream. So that's infectious. So you have a disease. But the word Apapaviddham means prophylactic, that we don't have the disease yet. Right? It's even before the impurities are arising, like a vaccine. What a vaccine does is, it's not a medicine. When you take a vaccine, let's say we took a COVID vaccine, so when the COVID virus comes and hits you, your body is strong enough to fight it. So that means apapaviddham, that's prophylactic. Right? When somebody sincerely engages in devotional service, right, they are supposedly considered purified. Apichet suduracharo bhajante mamanannabha sadhu reva samantavya samyak vibhasito hi saha. That's the 9th chapter, verse number 30 of Bhagavad Gita. That even if we make a mistake, we should still be considered a Mahatma. So Krishna's name and his the devotional service is prophylactic. It protects us, right? Because we are moving towards the Lord, right? So what happens is that, so what it means is that when we associate more with devotees, we attend devotional gatherings, we participate in kirtan and so forth, we become less inclined to sinful activities. That's what prophylactic and apapaviddham means. That the sinful activities we were going to do, we are protected from that also. What we have already done, those will be cured, shuddham, antiseptic, and what we are going to do in the future will be also cured. So then that will term as a vaccine, apapaviddham. Right? There's a story of Jagai and Madhai in the Chaitanya Charitamrita that shows the prophylactic effect. Right? They were delivered by Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda, and they stopped their sinful behavior completely after receiving their mercy. So anything they were going to do in the future was completely nullified by the mercy of the Lord. Right? Shuddham Papaviddham. We can take the example of sun, right? Which the sun represents Lord's purifying power. The sun touches all things, impure, polluted, there are swamps, garbage, and whatnot. But the sun is never polluted. Instead, the sun evaporates the moisture from those places and purifies the atmosphere, right? By sterilizing every place, through the heat. Right? So despite touching some things, everything, the sun remains pure. Right? So just like, if you see, let's say there's a pond and the pond stagnates, there is algae that develops in it, there's a foul smell coming. When the sun shines on it, it slowly evaporates, leaving the impurities behind. The pond dries up, the harmful bacteria that thrive in the wet environment, they are neutralized. Similarly, the Lord's presence slowly evaporates away those sinful tendencies and brings about internal purity. And okay, so that's Shuddham and Apapaviddham. And there's one more word. Where's that? Okay, yes, Avranam. Avranam is without blame. So it's without blame. And Prabhupada talks about the Ras Leela dance that Krishna does, right? Some people might say that it's inappropriate what Krishna does with the gopis, right? But then it's not even inappropriate. It's actually people who read that, they get purified. In the 10th canto, the Ras Leela chapter, 33rd chapter, there in the end, the last verse, Shukadeva Goswami says, Vikreditam idam cha Vishnu, Vikreditam vraja vadhubir idam cha Vishnu, Shraddhaim vito anushurnayat atha varnayedya. Bhaktim param bhagavati pratilabdha kaman hidrog ashv apanoti dhira. So all the hidrog, the heart, all the problems in my heart, they get purified, they get cleaned away when I hear the Ras Leela part. So to understand that how purifying that can be. But then if I see it, lusty desires come in my heart because I am not pure enough. So Krishna is beyond reproach. So there are two parts now. How does Krishna affect us? But then who Krishna is himself is also being mentioned here. He is beyond reproach. Right? He is pure in himself. Right? So Ras Leela is a very intimate pastime. So, but this verse, as I just quoted, the last verse of the 33rd chapter, the 10th canto, there we are told that you can get, actually, lust will go away when you hear Ras Leela episode. So that's what the sannyasis, there are so many sannyasis talking about the Ras Leela dance. So they are sannyasis, they have given up all this. So but then they are looking at it from the reality, what's happening in the spiritual world. They know that this world is a reflection, material world is a reflection. Activity of Krishna is a reality. So a serious devotee sees Ras Leela not as a reflection, but as a reality. right? Under the influence of Maya, I might see it negatively. But pure devotees having that one-pointed intelligence, they um, they become purified. Right? So what does Mahaprabhu say? Na dhanam, na janam, na sundarim. But I am saying more dhanam, more janam, more sundarim. Because my longings are infinite and I'm not pure. My influence of Maya is very strong on me. But when I focus towards Krishna, that focusing, that longing for Krishna frees me from these other longings and desires. So that's the meaning of the word avranam. Right? So these are the words that Prabhupada covers in it. At one point, let me see if I can find that. Oh, here. Okay. The Lord is so kind that he allows the forgetful living entity to continue in this way without interference. If a living being wants to go to hell, the Lord allows him to do so without interference. And if he wants to go back home, back to Godhead, the Lord helps him. Right? So this is an interesting statement Prabhupada is making. Right? So our actions, so what does it mean, letting somebody go to hell? Right? So it's hell also means, going to hell means desire to enjoy hellish desires. That's also equivalent to hell. So our actions are showing my longings, what my desires are. So that's what it means. It's not just that, oh yeah, surely we will also go to hell, but then it also means that hellish desires. Going to hell also means hellish desires. And as I mentioned, the verse 9th chapter, 29th verse of Bhagavad Gita, that tells us that Krishna is Samoham Sarva Bhuteshu Name Dveshasti Na Priya. He is neither envious nor in love with the common people. Okay, fine. You want to go to hell? Fine. I'll help you with that. You want to come to me? I'll help you with that. But when I desire to come to Krishna, then Krishna becomes more attentive towards me. He starts loving me and says, oh no, Premna, I'll help you here. Then he becomes like my father. Okay, so I think that's the whole purport. I think I covered prophylactic, papavidham. Yeah, covered everything. And one thing you'll notice, if you have read the purport, Prabhupada doesn't use the word Krishna. He's using the word Lord again and again. Lord, the Lord, 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 everywhere Lord. The reason Prabhupada is doing it, as we have talked about it in the past, in the beginning of this book, that because the Isopanishad is written for people who have an impersonal inclination. It's a bridging book between people who have no desire for bhakti or no desire for spiritual elevation to somebody who's in a mode of devotional service. So somewhere in the middle. So people should not feel that we are biased towards Krishna. Yeah. That's why Prabhupada is talking about this. Anything else in here? Here, this is a good point. Prabhupada says, liberation as conceived by an impersonalist is a myth. Now somebody can question you, Prabhupada is wrong. He's saying liberation is a myth. No, impersonalists are, it's not that impersonalism is also a path. Krishna accepts this in the Bhagavad Gita. Right? Ye to mam aksharam anityam avyaktam parupashate sarvatra gama chintam cha kutastam aslam dhuram sanniyamendriya gravam sarvatra samabuddhaya te prapnuvanti mamepa sarvabhuta hite rata. That those people also come to me who are praying to the impersonalists. How can impersonalism be a myth? Right? The myth that Prabhupada is highlighting here is that one day I'll be God. That's the myth. That's the myth. So that's why Prabhupada is saying real liberation means going back to Godhead. But if I put the concept of liberation that I will be God someday, that is a myth. That's the myth that Prabhupada is talking about here. Okay, I think I covered everything in the purport. Okay, this is an interesting verse. Yes, I like this verse. Okay, anything? Any points, comments, questions, thoughts? Anyone?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. I was
Hare Krishna.
trying to talk earlier, but I couldn't unmute. So my, Mataji asked about the question about our soul. This is my understanding that we're remembering, or it's because of our karma, right? That that our free will does what it does. Is that true?
So you're saying that our free will is defined by our karma? Is that what you're saying?
I mean, like our desires, right? Our desires are based on our karmas, is it not?
They are. However, you have that freedom to change them also. For example, at this point, Friday evening, not it was not Friday, it was Wednesday. On a Friday evening, you could have a desire, let me relax, drop everything, let me sit down with a warm cup of tea or a glass of wine and let me just, you know, uh, look at TV. But you consciously make a choice, not you, I'm saying in general, anybody makes a choice. No, I had a heavy week. I'll go and hear some Bhagavad Gita or some Bhagavatam. So, yes, the inclinations can push you towards your earlier karma, can push you towards some position, but you, as an intelligent being, can also move away from it. So, in that sense, the free will can be directed by your past karma, but if your intelligence is vyavasatmika buddhi, then that intelligence can take you in another direction. Did that make sense, Anu?
Yes, Prabhuji, and that's pretty much what I thought. But I wanted
Okay.
to just confirm, that
Yes.
it is because of our previous deeds that we are desiring what we're desiring. Correct?
Yes. And as I mentioned also, that even within this life, you can affect your free will. For
Yes.
example, people who become drug addicts, their free will shrinks significantly because now everything is connected to the addiction of drugs for them. They don't have any other, personal relationship with family members or going for a job or having friends or sports or nothing. All that free will has shrunk down because of their addiction. Similarly, for a self-realized soul, the free will becomes so huge because now Krishna becomes very merciful, like Prabhupada. He came with 40 rupees in his pockets and he was a billionaire within less than a decade. More than a billionaire. He had 108 temples, devotees all over the world, farm communities, whatnot. So for him, his free will had become so broad that his desire was so in tune with Krishna that his free will had become so broad that Krishna was okay with, okay, yes, I know what you want. I know what you're desiring is in tune with my desires. So, yes, I'll make your free will very broad. So, even within that same life, you could see people's free will shrink or expand also.
So Krishna does fulfill your desires if they're geared towards him.
Yes, he fulfills those.
Yeah.
And as I've quoted this verse many times today, 9th chapter, 29th verse of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that uh, when you become my devotee, then I pay a very special attention. Then Krishna starts protecting you from that very same day that you have become his devotee. Even though you are very low, even though I'm very minuscule, I have no qualification, but Krishna's protection is fully there with me. Just because I have made a sincere endeavor that yes, Krishna, I want to come to you. No, I leave it to you when you want me to call myself to you, but I have made that choice. And whether I fall down, whether I stand up, I'll stand up again, dust myself, start walking again, but I'll not give up this path. Then Krishna really becomes very attentive towards us.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Thank you, Prabhuji. Yeah.
You're
Very,
welcome.
very nice class, Prabhuji. Truly
Thank you.
nice class.
Okay, last call. Any more points, questions, comments, thoughts?
Prabhuji, this antiseptic one you were saying, right? When we come in contact with the Lord through holy name, chanting, deity service, seva. This also remind me like about getting the association of pure devotees, spiritual master, right? Obviously, this is like the best way to get, rid of all your impurities, right? Because I remember the sadhu sangha, right? Sarva shastra ka hai. Lava matre sadhu sangha, sarva siddhi hai, right? Chaitanya Charitamrita. I was just remembering that, right? Once you come in contact with the pure devotees, right? You can until
Yes.
the success and all your impurities are gone. It's more, and when in Nectar of Instruction, it says, right? Dipping into the Ganges for 1,000 and just coming in contact with the pure devotees, it's equal to that. So that is the, that is
Yeah.
how powerful it is to get the association of a spiritual master or a pure devotee or a sadhu. And then obviously
Yeah.
your all impurities, all the anarthas, keep slowly get rid of
Yeah.
them.
No, that's for true. Attaching ourselves to a pure devotee. Prabhupada talks of this in the third canto at a couple of places. I don't remember the exact verse, but at one point he says the result you get or the when you connect yourself to a pure devotee, attached to yourself, you get the same result what you will get when you attach yourself to Krishna. And he also says in the same third canto, somewhere, I can find that. He says, attachment to this material world is the greatest entanglement. But then, when the same attachment, when applied to a self realized devotee, opens the door of liberation.
Yeah.
So, connecting yourself to a pure devotee or to a devotee of the Lord automatically gives us liberation. Then we are good. And even we told this in the first canto, second chapter. I think it's the 25th or 26th word. Bhejiriye munyo tagre bhagavanta madokshajam. Sattva Vishuddha Shemaya Kalpante Taniha. That just by following devotees, the pure devotees, we'll also be liberated. All we have to do is just follow them. We don't have to etch out a new path for ourselves. No, just follow. That's more than enough for us to go back home, back to God. Like Prabhupada used to say to his disciples that you all are not qualified, but I have a backdoor key to Goloka. So you just keep holding on to my dhoti and I'll take you back. So that's all we need to just hold on to Prabhupada's dhoti and he'll take us back. Yeah.
So
So
those folks those devotees are very fortunate, right? Who are very close in the closed web of a very spiritual master, like close team, right? They are personally serving the spiritual master, like then they are very fortunate, right? They are getting very close proximity of such a pure devotee who is nothing but the representative of Krishna himself. So they are very fortunate, but yeah. So I just sometimes
they are
right?
fortunate. Yeah, no, I agree with you. They're fortunate. However, Prabhupada, from his example, has taught us Vapu and Vani. We talked about that
Yeah.
concept.
Yes.
Vani is more important when it comes to it. Because if you see Prabhupada's life, Prabhupada himself said he only met his spiritual master 4 or 5 times. Not
Yes.
a lot. But then they were devotees who were with his Guru Maharaj 24/7. And what did they do? No, you can see that the moment Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur left, there was some sort of, they broke down in different matters. Yes, they all are self-realized souls. They are very elevated devotees. But just by being in close proximity to their spiritual master, couldn't generate that respect that, oh, my master wanted this Gaudiya Math to stay together, so it should work towards it. But then Prabhupada, even though he was away from his spiritual master, he kept his word that, hey, my master has told me I have to go and spread this knowledge to the English speaking world. 44 years Prabhupada meditating on it, and then he fulfilled that desire. So his Vani was really very important for Prabhupada. Yes, you're right. If you get personal association, nothing better than that. But a spiritual master, he knows everything about his disciples. He will know what you are doing, where you stand, what is your mental status. Your spiritual master knows everything. He can see through you. So that is why our spiritual master is the only person in this creation whom you can be yourself. Otherwise, everywhere I'm trying to put a mask. I'm at work, I'm trying to pretend as somebody else. In front of other people, my friends, I'm trying to be like somebody. But in my spiritual master, I know he can see through me. However hard I try to pretend to be somebody else, he knows what a fool I am. So that's the only place where I'm happy that I don't have to be anybody here. I'm to just be myself because he knows me who I am, but still he loves me. It's a very beautiful relationship.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you. Okay, we'll wrap up. We'll get back. So my request, So please read the next verses that I mentioned in the past, 9, 10, 11, and 12, 13, 14. These 6 verses, set of 3, they're very similar to each other, just a difference of a word. And in the next class, when we discuss, I'll show you those differences and what it means. We'll go through it. So there are two sets of 3 verses each. So you'll see what it means and why they're doing it that way. But please read the purports, very valuable.